Welcome, listener, to Bite-Sized Tales, the flash fiction audio podcast. This week's story examines the price of destiny. So sit back and let's see what fate has in store for you.
The Seeing, written and read by Dot Moore. Some say that the tendrils that grow towards the heavens from the bricked walls of Castle Dannemore started out as mere ivy, foliage native to a long-forgotten past and a world no longer of consequence. Others believed them to be the inky black reach of the tormented king that supposedly ruled these lands. Decades passed without so much as a whisper. The great halls that once entertained the masses were now ensnared in silence. The vines crept skyward, undulating and whipping through the air. The waved hues on the eve of a lighting sky always sent the creeping plant into a frenzy, as if whatever enchantment possessed them was calling upon similar magic. Like calls to like, the subjects of this realm clung to the hope that their sovereign could someday wake from his wretched curse. The realm endured year after year of this misery. The prosperity of their livelihoods, whether from crop or trade, dwindled to almost nothing. Destitute farmers and shopkeepers attempted to leave, but no one could escape the reach of King Raglan. That was until she arrived. I'll never forget the morning the maiden stumbled into our dilapidated village. It was a fortnight before the next lighting. The fluorescent cast of our world's magic would once again reach the surface for its source. The townsfolk were heavy in preparation, and her presence was dismissed almost entirely as some vagrant passing through. If only that were the case. My grandmother always warned that one day King Raglan would meet his match, and the magic that held us here would lash out. She prophesied that our people would be the ones to bear its wrath. We've always been outcasts, even without the curse and famine. My family holds a connection to the magic that caused speculation and rumor to thrive amongst the villagers. Grandmother's gifts were never viewed as such by the township. She was cast out to the wilds with my grandfather, where they raised our family to embrace the magic that many viewed as a plague upon our lands. Our dismissal became a blessing for my grandmother. The distance from Castle Dannemore lessened the strain on her abilities. Her gift was one of foresight. We call it the Seeing. As years passed, my grandmother would have many visitors come from the village with trinkets and various forms of payment to request a seeing into their life. Most asked about prosperity and financial matters, but her favorite stories to tell were always those of newfound love. In the weeks before the lighting, I was always tasked with gathering supplies for my grandmother's rituals. She felt closest to her gifts when the sky came alive, so I was sent to the village to trade for various herbs and salt. I never looked forward to a ritual night in fear it would be my grandmother's last. I did, however, enjoy trips to the village at any opportunity, so I wandered untroubled by the errand towards the edge of the woods along the path I'd traveled many times before. As I neared the village, I came across a maiden cloaked in gray walking along the path. I could tell she was slender, but the cloak hid most of her figure. As I approached her from behind, my footsteps betrayed my stealth. She paused to slowly turn and face me. I straightened, gathering every ounce of bravery within me, and continued towards her. Maybe she wouldn't care to acknowledge me. She stood steadfast, waiting for me. As we met along our shared path, she reached out to me. Her upturned hand revealed what appeared as burn scars across her palm. She greeted me softly. "Hello, child. Are you returning from mighty adventures in the woods?" I stopped short at the sound of her sweet, breathy voice and looked up to meet her eyes. She smiled kindly, but something in her expression wasn't quite right. I swallowed, and with a slight crack to my voice, I spoke. "No, miss. I'm on an errand for my gran. She has fits, and we've run low on some of the tea that calms her nerves." The maiden paused, widening her eyes before grabbing hold of my wrist. "Do you speak of the seer of the wilds? She is who I seek. You must take me to her immediately. It is of grave importance that I meet with your grandmother." It was not uncommon for travelers to come looking for my gran's gifts, but this was the first I'd ever had the opportunity to lead one back home. Empathy washed over my expression as I patted the maiden's hand on my wrist. I shall take you to see my gran, but first I must get her supplies. If I arrive back without them, she'll be quite cross with me. The maiden nodded, and we quickly made our way through the village, gathering the various spices and herbs needed for the upcoming evening. Once finished, she took my hand in earnest. Please, we must go to your grandmother now. I haven't much time, and I need answers. I nodded, and we ventured back through the scenic path into the wilds. We arrived at my home, and it took all my strength to keep the maiden from bursting through the doorway unannounced. I furrowed my brow in frustration at her. Gran is very old-fashioned. You'll need to wait for me to invite you in when she's ready. The maiden pushed past me. I'm sorry, but I really don't have time for this. She burst through the door and began frantically wandering through the house. Seer, are you here? Please, you must help me understand. My withered grandmother rounded the corner, hunched over her cane, with the shawl I knit for her draped haphazardly across her shoulders. As she approached the maiden, she reached for her cheek, pulling the cloaked woman to her knees, now at eye level. My grandmother smiled as she brushed a stray wisp of hair away from the maiden's brow. I knew you would find me someday, child. I've been waiting so long to meet you. Tears streamed from the maiden's face, and my grandmother brushed them away with her wrinkled thumb. Hush, dear. We cannot have you weeping now. Not when there is so much for you to do.
Dot was feeling a little under the weather, so she asked me to read her author's note for her this week. I originally intended to lean more into the story of the castle and whatever cursed magic it had lingering around it. But as I worked on developing the seer herself, I just couldn't resist pursuing a story that hinged on her abilities. I absolutely have more of this story to tell. Who knows? Maybe it'll make an appearance in future chapters. This chapter of Bite-Sized Tales has been brought to you under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Intro and outro music is Fantasy Motion by Alexander Nakarada, provided under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, we would greatly appreciate reviews and recommendations to your friends. Finally, for more information about our authors, visit bitesizedtales.com. We can't wait to read to you again next time.